Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Creator Notes podcast, the podcast where we get up and close with your favorite creators and find out what makes them tick. Today we have a fellow podcaster and just general legend, really. GameTrain, welcome in. Hello.
Hey, thanks for having me. You can just call me Callan as well. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, well, it's usually the first question that we talk about, which is probably just going to lead us down the rabbit hole anyway.
Exactly,
yep. You are GameTrain of the GameTrain podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like, is it named after you, or you just sort of took the name of the podcast?
No. So I took the moniker after we'd started the podcast and when we first started streaming. So do you want me to just start?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, okay. So like I've had all random, I guess, online handles in the past.
As we all do, yeah.
Yeah, first started off, back in very early days, Vegeta, because I love Dragon Ball.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome.
That was like my StarCraft name back in the day.
Actually, do you want to hear my? Oh, it's bad. Like, it's really bad. But the only reason, because you made me thought of it, because I put a Z at the end of it for Dragon Ball Z. It was, I don't know, this is exposing himself. It was Macca 007Z.
Brilliant.
That's so bad.
Yeah. I had the name Mayborn for a long time.
Mayborn?
That was my Warcraft character I had for many years.
Okay.
That name came from Stargate.
Yes.
And then I went to Your Face from there as a bit of a loud one,
Went to Your Face.
Yeah. Yep. And then, but it wasn't spelt with a C, it was spelt with an S.
That's so much worse somehow.
I know. And then, really from there, I just make up random names here and there for when I'd have to sign into online stuff. And then when we started the podcast, it was probably a good year after we started the podcast that I started streaming. Carl and I used to share the channel. And then he broke off and started just doing the lyrical channel because it was just easier to do it that way.
Yeah.
And people just was like, GameTrain. I'm like, yes. And then I've just taken the moniker from there and I'm happy with it now. But like, I'm fine with people using my normal name as well. Like, I'm fully okay with that. I don't mind at all.
Yeah, I actually in a lot of ways I kind of prefer it. It makes things simpler. I have the most boringest normal name, so I just sort of, I'm like, oh, yeah. But we actually talked about this on a previous episode of this podcast where we're like, just have a normal name. It doesn't have to be yours. So I can be Max Power. So
I'm fine. People call me Callan or GameTrain. I don't mind.
Yeah. Well, I do.
In some ways, I almost prefer just people using my normal name.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a bit older and I've always been called that, I haven't really grown up with a screen name. When some people these days, they've got like their screen name when they're like 10, 11 years old and they just keep it all the way through. Yeah. This is again,
we talked about this before. I find it funny where it's like, should we be like reserving screen names for our children just because they're going to be running out and we don't want them to have too many numbers and
that's actually true. Like, you got to remember, like, for me, when I was still like 10, 11 years old, I had an online game at that stage because
same.
Wasn't really around then.
No,
it's showing my age, but it was one of those things. Like, it wasn't until what was it, 98 that I first started online gaming with StarCraft, funnily enough.
Yeah, it was Age of Empires for me. It's weird because it's like, and that was dial-up internet. Yeah. So I'm reserving ZombiesLvBacon Jr. everywhere I can at the moment.
Bacon Jr. Oh my gosh.
But it's that, I guess it's that thing where you go from gamer to content creator and you're like, oh shit, I should probably have like a brand almost rather than be your mum's smelly feet 79 or whatever crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, Carl, my co-host for the podcast, it's easy. He just uses musical name. Like, he's got it easy as.
Yeah.
He puts that across everything. Fantastic. So, so for me, it's like GameTrain or Callan. But yes.
Nice. So we should talk about the GameTrain podcast. Where'd that come from? How'd that start? The highs.
Yeah, okay. All right. So, take you back a bit. We'll talk about gaming now. I grew up with gaming. Always enjoyed it. And then in the early 2010s, like 2013, I ended up moving overseas for an extended period of time. In doing so, I sort of stepped away from any sort of gaming, really. I just didn't do it for a long time when I was over there for those couple of years that I moved to England. When I came home after those couple of years, everyone that I'd sort of been gaming with or associated with gaming had almost moved on with their lives, so to speak. So, we're at that stage when we're just 30 years old around there. So a lot of friends were getting married.
Yeah.
All that sort of things you'd kind of expect in life. So I came back, I'm like, hey, let's game. And they're all like, we don't do that anymore.
I've got the kids.
Now she doesn't like it.
Oh.
It's like, okay, rightio, yep. So, yeah, when I came back, I struggled to get back into game, even myself, because I'd been away for that extended period of time. And I remember sitting down to play The Witcher 3, actually. I just couldn't get into it. I'm like, what's happened? Have I moved past gaming as well?
Yeah.
What it almost felt like. But then it was when that same year in 2015 when Phantom Pain came out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And Carl, my current co-host, we hadn't spoken in years. Like, we were mates back in early 2000s, like 01, 02, 03. But we'd lost contact, I guess, in a way from probably about 09 onwards. We didn't really speak. We just drifted apart. But we're still on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
And then he put up this post about Phantom Pain. And then I'm like, oh, yeah.
He's a gamer.
Yo, he's like, hey. And we just randomly started talking after this big sort of hiatus, right?
Yeah.
And we got talking and over that. And then over the next probably 12 months, every time something come out, we'd talk. And that I remember Fallout 4 came out. I can't remember if it was that year or the year after. Well, I remember
it was close. Yeah.
A lot of things of Fallout, like we were like videoing our screens and sending it to each other because we weren't. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, that's how far technology sort of come over.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, so none of us were streaming back then. But it was like showing each other our bases that were built in Fallout and giving each other tips and all this sort of stuff. And then I remember Final Fantasy 15 came out.
Oh, yeah.
In 2016, that was.
Yep.
And we're both big Final Fantasy fans. And just when we hit this one point in the open world, we'll just message each other back and forth, like, oh, this is so great and all this. And during this time, like, it was just fun talking games with him, And then same time, there was where I was working, there was this, I was the editor there, and talking to him about things all the time, and he'd started up a podcast as well. And talking to him about his podcast, he did a movie review podcast. I'm like, who do you do this with? And he's like, I do it with my mate. Hold up a second, how do you do this? And he explained it to me. It made so much sense about it earlier because in my professional life, I'm a video editor, so I should have thought about this originally. But it was they both record their voice separately at either end while they did a voice call, and then someone would edit them together.
Yep.
So once he told that to me, I was like, ooh, okay. So one day I messaged Callan and said, hey, random idea. No, we're talking, must be talking over the phone or something about Final Fantasy. I said, hey, yeah. I was like, mate, random idea, just, you can knock me back on this. I'm like, you want to start a podcast with me about video games? He's like, oh, yeah, could be fun. So that was towards the end of 2016.
Okay.
Now, in 2017, we had the Switch coming out, right?
Right.
Started here in March. So we went, all right, let's set up our first episode around the Switch, a new console. What a great way to start, right? Podcast. And that's where we started. We had no aim, no idea about really, apart from just us playing games, anything really going on in the industry or other creators or anything like this. Like, it was just legit him and I just going, let's have some fun, and just like, God, we didn't even call it content creation. We're just like, let's just make
a podcast. Let's go.
Just make a podcast. Let's sit down and
yeah.
We had no plan, nothing from the very, very start. Our first episode is woeful.
Oh, they always are. They absolutely are.
Like, I hadn't listened to it back until our 100th episode, and when we did that, I grabbed a bunch of sound bites from our first episode and played them back to Carl, as just cringe as.
Yeah. I thought about doing the same thing when I was doing the ZLB podcast, and then I listened to that first podcast. I'm like, we need to burn this.
Yeah, like every time someone goes, "Oh, listen to your podcast, Callan," I'm like, "Don't listen to the first episode."
I know. Yes. This is half the reason why we kind of scaled back the ZLB podcast in the end. Was like, people will be like, "Oh, I love it. You have a podcast?" Yeah. It's like, "Oh, I'll go back and listen to it." And then you'll see that people listening to episode 1. It's like. And then it just dies off. I'm like, man, if you had started at episode like 78, you would be having a great time.
I'm just like, listen to the current stuff because it is about current stuff. Like, and since the start, we've always sort of, except for the first episode, I guess, we sort of, started building upon the idea of the podcast. Like, as I said, we had no aim or direction at first. And I remember editing the second episode and I was just adding stupid sound effects. Music at times under things, like, it's really stupid.
Yeah.
It's really, really dumb. But as I said, we didn't know what we're doing. We just sat down and just started talking to the microphones and recorded it.
Yeah.
It wasn't until after that episode that I started coming up with the idea to do segments on the podcast. Working in TV for many years, I've become quite accustomed to shows having very specific segments.
Like a format,
like a proper format. So we started throwing around ideas about that, and then eventually settled on the format that we still use today, which is intro, we go news, games we've been playing, we do a review game. If any questions come through, we answer them, and then we do generally our lame loving, which is lame train is something we haven't liked. Love train is something that we've loved, and hype is something we'll do.
Yeah.
So we end on a good note, sort of thing. Originally we had lame train at the end, but I moved that back because it felt weird ending on something that give a slap to, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's like, hey, here's this great podcast. And by the way, we hate this thing. All right, have a great day.
I was like, no, let's end on a high. But actually, the name of the podcast is another weird thing that came about as well.
Yeah.
We had a lot of trouble coming up with a name. We didn't have a name for. We did by the first episode, but before that, I remember, over a couple of weeks just throwing ideas around.
Yeah.
And I remember this one day I was sitting there at work. And I was just like looking up at the TV because we had TVs in our edit suites, which is great. Looking up there, just sort of daydreaming almost. Don't I sound great at work right now? But yeah, I was just sort of daydreaming, just sort of look at a trailer for Train Spotting 2 came on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I love Train Spotting, and I was sitting there looking, and I went Game Spotting. I'm like, wait, no, we can't use that.
GameSpot would be very upset.
I looked at it again. I went hype train podcast. I'm like, no, if it's hype train podcast, it feels like you're gonna be hype up and excited.
Yeah, you gotta do the silly noises and.
I'm like, no, there's gonna be times when we don't agree with something, or it's a bit of a downer, or it's like. Hey, welcome to the Hype Train podcast. This week, 1,000 people have been let go from their jobs.
Hype.
Doesn't really work at all, does it?
No.
I looked down and went, GameTrain. And I walked down my edit suite and went to another editor at work. I'm like, GameTrain, does that make sense to you? And they went, it's not a bad name. And then I messaged Carl, GameTrain. He's like, yes, that's the one. That's it. Let's go with it. Now we got the name. Just from that, like we threw maybe 50 different names at each other, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the games, I was like, nah, can't go near that one. That would be a bit weird.
Game spotting, yeah. Yeah. No, it's like I've had the same sort of thing. This is third podcast for me, technically, that I've started. And like, naming shit it's super fucking hard. It's just so hard.
Yeah, it's like what's in a name? Everything's kind of in a name in a way.
Yeah, and you gotta kind of explain what your podcast is about in the name, because a lot of the time people will just see the name. It's not like they're going to watch a trailer or research you or anything. They literally just a lot of the time they're scrolling through and just going, oh yeah, this looks good. And that's about it. That's as far as you get. And yeah, man.
I wanted something short, something that made like roll off the tongue fine, and something that you'd kind of remember as well.
Yeah, so my old podcast, which I don't know if it's still up or not because I don't really control that bit, but it is called the Silliness and Shenanigans podcast, and we used to do it old school. So we'd all go around and like to our house, and I just built a studio in the house in the living room.
Wow.
and we'd just sink beers and eat dumplings and talk shit, and that was our entire podcast. And it went pretty good. Like I was pretty comfortable. Like it was engaging and entertaining, and like we'd just bring random people in, and it would be like always a little bit different. And then I think it was like episode 7 or 8, might have been 8, and I went on this huge rant about Henry Cavill and his mustache. And I thought it was hilarious. Also, I was drunk, but it's like it blew up. Like when I say it blew up, it was like triple, like hundreds of thousands of listens.
What?
And I'm like, what? And the stats were insane. And like I don't even know. I couldn't even tell. I couldn't tell that it was just so big. I'm like, are people listening to it? Is this a bot attack? What is happening? And then that whole instant hype, because like we're getting emails and like people were messaging us and stuff like that, and like saying, oh, I really love this episode and whatever. And that I think got not so much in my head, but like got in all the other people on the podcast's head, and like we have to match that energy every single time. And then when the next podcast came out and we're kind of just, you know, doing our thing or whatever, like there's a few times where we just sort of stopped because like my co-host is like, no, I don't think that's good enough, like we need to try that again, sort of thing. And I'm like, we just do it. Just do it. We need to just do it. If you keep stopping it, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
And we eventually got something together, but it sounded like it was shit. It was shit, and then we're like, we can't do it. We're not gonna put this episode up there. And then I think we ended up getting one more episode out, and it did nowhere near as much as Henry Cavill's Mo. And then I'm like, what do you want to do? And they like, we'll just take a break, and then we just never went back to it. And to just to really sink it in, I started getting like messages on like all the socials, like, hey, when's the next podcast coming out? When's the next episode? No. I'm like, who are you people? Who are you people? And that was, I wanted to. So then when that all kind of scrapped and that was all gone, whatever, and I'm like, I love podcasting and I love making like more media that's not just, hey, watch me play a game, or I recorded this or whatever. Like it's it's so many people can just record playing a level of Mario or something like that. And but having a talking and creating something that's completely from scratch, essentially, it's like making pizza from scratch versus buying a frozen pizza. It's and it was cool. And I'm like, all right, well, the next one was the ZLB podcast. Because it's my podcast, I'll do what I want. And that was it. And we went through so many different iterations, and like even just looking at the numbers, some episodes would just pop off and always pop off. Other episodes would tank, and you just go, that's what happens. It's whatever. And we always had this weird number that kind of bugged us. It's like, yeah, and like 5% of your listeners are from Belgium. It's like, what? Why? Every week. I've got
weird stuff like that happening as well. Like, actually, at one stage, we branched off and started doing a second podcast as well. It was called On the Platform, and it was similar to this, where it was a interview style podcast.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to do more of that sort of podcasting on the side. We did about 4 or 5 episodes, and then left it at that. Something I can always bring back if I need to. But yeah, it was like, I don't know if I want to do this, or like I was like, I wasn't not agreeing with it, but it was like I didn't like how some of the episodes turned out, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's
all my guests were great, but I just wasn't happy with
I think that's
content.
Important, particularly if like it's important for motivation. Like if you're not, if you can't listen back to your podcast and go, that was a cracker, that was great, and then something's not quite right, is it? Like it's like. Yeah. And like I remember I was editing. So this to put it in perspective, right? Like we explained how the GameTrain podcast started, which was basically throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks, and then hoping for the best. Where like for this podcast, I did like 8 months of planning. I did pilot episodes. I talked to other people that do similar sort of shows and got their kind of thoughts and everything else. Some of which helped. Some of which I just like, you did what? That doesn't make any sense. But I remember like editing. So I recorded the first 3 episodes back to back, and then I was editing them and everything else. And then I remember just laying down and like listening back to the episode. And I was just fucking chill. It was so good. I'm like, this is it. This is what I want. I want to have something that people could put on, listen to this conversation while they're working, or while they're grinding on a video game, or maybe they're driving or whatever, and they could just be like, yeah, there's a voice going into my head. It's not intrusive. It's informative. There's something I might learn something. There might be something inspirational. Cool. Yep. That was the whole point. And so far, I've kind of hit it. But I guess from being in the game for so long, so we did I think I did 100 and something episodes with ZLB podcast, for example. If you can't make it past episode 10, you didn't make it. Like that's like the hurdle. Like if you I see so many episodes, like so many podcasts, and even interview shows like this, and it's like, yeah, we got 3 episodes, 4 or 5, and didn't work out.
I'll tell you what. Even looking at that, the amount of times GameTrain podcast has almost fallen on its face is just ridiculous. Like, Carl's tried to quit the podcast, I think 3 or 4 times over the years, at least. It's like, I'll get a big text message. I mean, this is massive. Like, it's huge text message. I'll sit there for several minutes reading this thing. It's like, can't do it. You know, it's so hard with everything else going in my life. First time it happened, I got very upset. You know, I was like, oh, it's going to die. That's it. It's all over. And then so we negotiated for a bit, and I took down a bit more of the responsibility. And then like the second time, I was a bit upset again. You know, I was like, all right, I'll do this. Let's try and do this. So I think the first thing we changed was, I think we started out weekly. Yeah. And then we dropped that back very fast.
Yeah, it's hard work weekly.
Very hard work. It's such hard work. Especially because we're reviewing games on the podcast at that stage. We were trying to play a game as we could, review it, do all the stuff, and then the next week and go again. And it was too much. It really was too much for just 2 guys to try and do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, and then by I think the 3rd time I got one of these big long text messages from Carl. I was like, yeah, that's cool, man. I'll find someone else. You know, by that stage, I had made inroads and started meeting other creators. I'm like, I'll find someone else.
Yeah. I mean, it's
solo ones but then I think we started out weekly. Now we do it actually when we kind of want to do it. Yeah. And we're happier for it now. Like,
it's a different vibe. You know, and you know what? I think a lot of people, like I've listened to a lot of your podcasts. I mean, they don't come out that regularly these days, let's be honest. But
no. Last year I think we had 6.
Yeah, and like,
but this year already I think we've had 3 or 4. Like, it's crazy. We've gotten back on the horse, so to speak. But
but it's if you were trying to pump them out weekly, I could just imagine how defeated they would sound. It's like, it's just, and like I'm doing this show weekly, but it's also, there's so many people. I just want to get as many people on the show as possible.
But it's a different style. You're not having to sit down and try to do a 20-hour video game.
Well, exactly. And like ZLB podcast, we did recording, but then we found that when we had the flexibility of recording and trying to do it weekly, we'd always end up pushing it because we're like, oh man, I can't be fucked today. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it tomorrow. You know, we're going to whatever. Then we end up, because, you know, people don't realize we record it and then there's a lot of work that goes into it afterwards. Yeah. The editing and the publishing and just fucking SEO shit and all that. It's just a nightmare. Anyway.
I guess we've tried to keep it very sort of free in that week. Like Carl, because he's a professional musician. So stuff's always happening. A late gig might pop up, or he's got to go on a tour, or he's got to do this or that, or he hasn't played enough of the game that we're going to review. So we'll just push things. It happens, and we're so used to it now. We've been doing this for almost 7 years now.
It's crazy. Crazy.
And, you know, we're not even at episode 150 yet because we just go on our own way. But we're happier for now from where we started. Very different.
I found that. Because I switched to live format where we'd stream it live, and that was almost perfect because it was almost like a TV show in the sense that, you know, you tune in at 6 p.m. on Sunday and this is the show and it's on. The thing that killed that whole idea was Twitch ads because you can't control it. So I'm trying to have a conversation and then 6 ads rock up in the middle of it and it's just ruined. So then I had to we'd have to plan breaks. So we had to have ad breaks in my podcast.
Oh no.
So like I would be running every 30 minutes and be like, all right guys, well, we'll be back in just 3 minutes and run some ads. And so we don't get rid of the intro hours. Fucking Twitch cucked us so hard.
We tried the live ones for a while as well. But again, it was adding up to extra work and that I was having to get trailers ready and
oh, yeah, no.
We probably shouldn't be doing on Twitch, like almost throwing our own ad in. But like, it was like at times we're like, do we talk to chat? Do we ignore chat? Do we just try and do the podcast with chat sitting there? It was we couldn't really decide on something, and it was just awkward that mid podcast a raid comes in or whatever, you know.
So I know exactly what you're talking about, because I had all these conversations, the same thing, and we opted don't talk to chat. We have like messages popping up all the time saying, hey, we're recording the podcast, sit back, enjoy, you don't need to chat, we can see your messages, we may respond, we may not, all that sort of stuff. And like we did all that, and that was fine, like it was all fine. But then the problem became I needed to find people to be on the podcast at 6 p.m. every Sunday. So if someone's like, oh, well, I'm going out of town this weekend, I'm like, oh, well, I need a replacement. Hey, anyone available 6 p.m. Sunday? And they're like, oh, I can do like 3 p.m. Like, that doesn't help us. It's live TV, baby. We can't do it. And it's like, it's so...
Again, we had random times when we'd do ours, but it was like, and there was one day when... So I had this alert, right? This wasn't when I got on my new ones these days, but this other alert that was called Hype Dog. And it put this dog face up on the screen and have this really, really fucking loud music that would just go off. Anyway,
Hype Dog.
I discovered this as we were starting to do the podcast.
Oh, no.
So what does chat do?
Oh, no.
Hype Dog, Hype Dog, Hype Dog. And I'm trying to frantically turn the thing off.
Is it in the podcast? Did you edit it out or anything?
I can't really... Yeah, I honestly can't remember now.
Oh, that'd be so good.
You know what? You know exactly. One person finds it, everyone's on top of that, and I couldn't blame them because it's exactly what I would do.
Yeah, I get a similar problem now where, like, if I message, like, someone will be like, "Hey, you know, jump on Helldivers," about, "No, I'm working on stream stuff, whatever." And then next thing you know, the redeems start going off because they know that I've got OBS open and I'm working on stuff. So they just start redeeming shit while I'm not even streaming, just to scare the crap out of me, basically. I'm just like, oh my God.
I couldn't figure out how to stop it. I got rid of the picture. The sound was coming from somewhere. I didn't know where it was coming from. I then had to mute the word /hype in my chat to this day because I don't know where the sound file sits.
That is fantastic.
I can't find it. So I'm like, well, I'll just mute that forever now and no one will be able to use it.
There you go. Everyone who's listening and is like, hey, I would love to start a podcast one day. These are the challenges. This is what we have to put up with. There's no, and you know, I suppose that's probably the one thing I notice getting into podcasting in particular. I'm like, it's not like Twitch. It's not like YouTube or nothing like that. You don't just sign up to a website, do a podcast, and away you go. It's like no one actually does a lot of that. A lot of it's like, hey, you got to find your own hosting, or you got to pay someone for hosting, or you got to find a particular website, and you got to make it feed into other websites. And like, there's no like social feed or social media or anything. It's all you. You just got to make it happen. And I'm like, this is shit.
Yeah, we didn't realize it'd be like that, obviously, when we kind of started. But
I just thought like Apple Podcasts would be like a website you log into and upload your podcast and you're done. And I'm like, no, apparently not. Apparently that's just not how that works.
Yeah, RSS feed and...
The one thing I will say, and only very recently, that like Spotify is doing it more like that now, where you can upload your podcast in video and audio, and then you can RSS feed out of Spotify.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
It's all very new.
We're still hosting through Podbean. That's what we've been since.
Yeah, Podbean. Yeah, I think I did pod.co or something like that. There's so many of them. They all work really well. You just have to pay money.
Yeah.
So it's nuts. But yeah, so you know, but so many people like, hey man, I'd love to be on a podcast, stuff like. I almost wanted to start the Random Ass Podcast. Just call it the Random Ass Podcast, and it's just like, whoever says I want to be on a podcast, I go, great, Friday 3 p.m. Let's go.
So, I've got on my dating profile, which is out there, I do a podcast, and it is so funny the amount of times. Like,
is that a pro or a con? Some people that'll be a red flag, I'd reckon.
Some people it's a red flag, and then a lot of people are like, is it a true crime podcast? No, it's a video game podcast.
There's some video game crimes.
Or the best one was this. I started talking to this girl, and she's like, "Oh, what's your podcast?" I'm like, "Oh, GameTrain podcast." And she's like, "I'll download." She's like, "I like games. I'll download an episode and give it a listen." And I'm like, "Please do." Okay. And then she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm listening to the episode at the moment." I'm like, "Oh, sweet." Blocked me.
What? Do you know what episode?
I can't remember. But I was just like, it wasn't that bad, was it? Like,
there's definitely actually now. I mean, I'm very, very lucky to have not I don't have to play the dating game. But there's definitely some ZLB podcasts that I would be very ashamed of, honestly. It's not necessarily my fault, just been associated with some of the people that I put on that podcast and some of the shit they said. But damn, that's gonna hurt. That's like the worst review you can get for an episode of the podcast.
Yeah, it's like, well, we don't really say anything offensive on the podcast that, but yeah, it was just one of
their response.
Right, okay, cool. I told Carl, and Carl's like, what?
They listened to your podcast and they literally said, I never want to talk to you again.
Love it. But when we did start that podcast originally, we had no direction where we're going to go. We had no idea what we wanted to do or where it would actually lead us. And it's actually fascinating now looking back on where we've come from to where we sort of are now, just from starting this podcast up all those years ago.
Yeah.
And probably the first one I remember doing was trying to jump into, I guess, more podcast communities. So I was joining up to different podcast communities here and there.
Oh, yeah.
Joined up to the Australian Gaming Podcast Network.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and there was all types in there back then. I think Pez had the biggest podcast in the group back then, but Brendan from 8-Bit was in there.
I know Brendan well, yeah.
Yep.
I was on his More Than Hentai podcast recently.
Ah, yes.
Which is popping off from what I've been told. So it should too.
Yeah, it's great.
It's a good listen.
A whole bunch of other creators, etc. So I joined that to start with. Just trying to, I guess, reach out and start talking to other podcasts.
Network.
Yeah, and then listen to other gaming podcasts too, and not really like steal them, but maybe get ideas own or see what we're doing compared to theirs, etc. And I noticed that even back then, like a lot of people were style, but then I noticed after a while, people started listening back to ours, and then they started throwing in segments into theirs.
Oh, okay.
I know where you got that from. So that was kind of, one of those sort of moments. Like, okay, I see you guys have changed, but
it was sort of like I got really nervous because I was like working on this one, and as I was working on this one, I could see like a few other people like, oh, we're gonna start interviewing creators. I'm like, stop! I'm working on one. Let me go first. It's just like, but I remember I was sitting there. I can't remember who I was talking to. I was talking to a couple of people, and it might have been after DreamHack, I think. And we were talking about, and I'm like, I'm sure there was a show that was just like this, and they used to stream it, and it was years ago, and I couldn't remember the name of it. I'm like, I just remember that I used to tune in, and I'll just interview just random people, like random creators and streamers mainly, and stuff like that. And I always found it like a good way to like find a new streamer kind of thing, a new content creator. And I'm like, I gotta find the name for it, and I can't even remember the name now, but I did find like a clip, and I'm like, that's what I'm trying to recreate. I'm trying to do that, and and then they're like, oh yeah, then they sent me this list. The thing was like, well, I suppose the biggest thing for me was I'm like, oh, this person does it, and then I looked and like, they've done 2 this year, and I'm like, so how long am I waiting for the next episode of this I don't know, show or whatever? It's just I don't know. I think consistency for me was like a big one. And I know it's hard, and even what, I don't even know what episode we're up to, like 8 or something now, because we kind of ditched the numbers because it's not really about the numbers, and it's like there's already been a few episodes where I'm like, oh man, we need to record an episode. it's like, you get lazy and you kind of go, we could play games, or we record an episode. Or we could do an episode later and play games now. It's like, so I got to get out of that habit of just being like, it's fine. If we do it just beforehand, it'll be fine. Nothing can go wrong. It's like, but it's, and I suppose the other thing, and like you sort of mentioned, like the sort of opportunities and stuff that come out of doing something like this. And I was talking to someone, I won't mention who, because we're sort of working on something at the moment. And I was talking to someone and I was like, talking about how I get to go to a lot of like movie previews and product launches and activations and all that kind of fun stuff. And I was trying to think how I got into it, because I kind of just fell into it, I guess. And the only thing that makes sense is that it was because it was like peak ZLB podcast for me. And like they were sitting there going, we need content creators. And then when you type in like Melbourne podcast, for example, it might only bring up a short list because people not necessarily Melbourne focused, where like ZLB podcast was like, Zombies Love Bacon from Melbourne, gamer, movies, anime, everything, blah, blah, blah. And then that is enough for someone who's doing media and they're trying to fill an event to reach out. And then all of a sudden you go to one event, you meet some people, you meet some more people, and so on and so forth. That was just simply because I was a content creator and I was making content and I was being active and whatever, and waving a big flag saying, look at me. And then now they're looking for people to come to events. And now I'm like, oh shit, I'd like to go to this event. And I can message them and say, hey, I'd really like to go to this. And sometimes they completely ignore me. But then other times they're like, sweet, you're in. It's great.
Well, we went about it all in a very different way to that. And it was Carl actually that started getting the ball rolling on this. I think it was about episode 6 or 7. There was a indie game being made in Brisbane, the Cloud Catcher Chronicles or something like that.
I don't even know that.
And he's like, oh, no, wait, no, it wasn't that one. It was a different one. There was some other indie game, but he had his eye on it. And somehow he found the email address to the company. And he goes, oh, I just emailed that company just asking for, like, game code and see what happens. Are you serious? He's like, yeah. I'm like, bro, we're like 6 episodes in. I don't even know what we're doing that time. You just ask him for stuff. He goes, oh, I thought I would. And then, like, next day, they'll write back, yep, sure, here's the game code. And we're like, what is this? And we're like, we just asked and they gave us a code. And then the next one, there was that indie from Brisbane, same thing. I'm like, oh, this is Luca. Let's reach out to them. Type them out an email. Hey, wouldn't mind talking about your game and podcast. Like, here's a code. And we're like, is this a thing? We had no idea because we weren't talking really with other creators.
No.
Right? It was like, and then when you try to, people would keep their hand, at that time anyway.
Gatekeeping.
This is back in 2017. They keep their cards very close.
Yeah.
Right. So we're all just trying to figure out stuff on our own. And then we just started messaging different publishers in that. And I did a lot of research and trying to figure out different places in Australia where to and it's not very obvious on where you go looking for that sort of thing.
Not at all.
Very difficult. A lot of emails, phone, eventually. But like, I guess, what you call like a little book of like contacts sort of thing, like from all different publishers, etc. And every time game come out, send them a message. And our first event that we went to, they actually reached out to Carl, I think, because this was the EB Games Expo on the Gold Coast.
Oh, okay. Like so one of the last ones, I guess.
Yeah, the last one, yeah.
Yeah, I was there.
Oh my God, so was I. I reached out to Callan and said, oh, you gaming content, you do a podcast. Would you like a media pass? And Carl's like, I got a media pass to this event. I'm like,
hell yeah.
I'm like, can you ask for a second one? He's like, wow. I'm like, mate, we've been asking for games. Come on, the worst I could say is no, right? He's like, yeah. He's like, my co-host would like to come too. Can you get him a pass? They're like, sure. Yeah. So I ended up flying up for it, and we're just like absolutely wrapped. Like we couldn't believe that we'd been like given free pass to this event. Again, we used that event to. We didn't really know any other content creators. We met another podcaster there, had a quick chat. That was about it.
Yeah.
But our aim there was to go meet people from all the different publishers in person. Yeah. Establish that connection, build relationships, etc. Then, which worked. It was very good outcome there. After that was PAX 2017. So we applied for PAX that year, but didn't get it. So we're a bit bummed about that. But we're like, oh, we'll buy tickets and go, and that was amazing. But that's that PAX, and we didn't realize that at the time set off this chain of events, sort of been wild over years. So a big thing about what Carl and I do, we also help out a lot with the GenerOZity charity, which is run by Joel Rennie. He's a guy who does a lot of video, audio stuff for around the industry, etc., through his production company, Those Wizards, which has been growing for years and years now. He does all the official PAX videos. He did all the official South by Southwest videos last year as well. He's worked with all different brands along the way, done campaigns for Bethesda and I think stuff with Nintendo and all this, done a lot of stuff. But GenerOZity is this charity that he started up. Do a couple events each year, live events generally, where we get a bunch of content creators together, do a bunch of fun stuff, raise a lot of money. Like, we've got a sort of deal with sort of PAX where they give us the Wombat stage each year.
Pretty good deal.
Content off the Wombat stage. It's a lot of fun. We get our own PAX pin as well that we get to sell, raise money as well, which is incredible, and some awesome designs on that as well.
Absolutely.
So it was PAX 2017. So Carl and I head there, and we actually used to do video content. We had our friend Twan shoot video and edit for us as well. We've got videos of the EB Expo and of that PAX. They're actually really good videos.
Man, I'd love if I'm in the background of your video.
I can imagine. A look at those back, because there was 1 or 2 times that we watched one of the videos back for our 100th episode, and there's a cosplayer there that we'd done stuff with on GenerOZity, but she's all dressed up on the video. I'm like, oh my god, what? We actually had like spoken to her? Like, it was just weird.
It's weird.
Yeah, so we went to this PAX in 2017, and Audio Technica, like every year, had their big booth. And I remember in the AGPN, I think it was Brendan wrote up, who wants to record at PAX? And we sent in our thing saying, hey, we'd love to record.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, but we got nothing back. No, you know.
Yeah.
Whatever. But then I remember then Joel had, this was before GenerOZity was at PAX or anything like that, had down on the promenade, he had a booth set up in one of the random restaurants there in a back room called Podcast on the Promenade, he called it. And
That's brilliant.
He threw up a message going, hey, anyone want to come and record? We've got a podcast booth set up. So I was like, Carl, what do you reckon? We go message this guy? I was like, oh, yeah. So we messaged him. We didn't hear anything back until like the Friday night of PAX. I remember we're in an Uber going to a bar to get drunk. Joel messaged us going, hey, do you guys want a spot and podcast on the promenade on Sunday afternoon or whatever it was? I'm like, well, I guess we'll do this. Carl's like, guess so. So we sent Joel a message back, said, oh, yeah, we'll come down. We'll do it. So, because I knew of Joel in a way. I knew he had a lot of sort of connections throughout somehow, but I didn't know where he fit into the picture. We're trying to figure that out. And it's a hard thing to do when you first go into that sort of creative sphere, is where does everyone fit into all this?
Yeah.
So yeah, we went and met Joel and had a quick chat to him and went and recorded our podcast, and it was great. And we came out and Joel's like, wow, I love you guys. That was amazing. So you guys want a beer? And we're like, yeah. So we sat down with Joel and had a beer, and we just got talking and about our lives and all that sort of stuff. And started talking about Carl's music. Joel's like, oh, wow. And we gave him like Carl's card and stuff, and he seemed impressed. But then some of his other mates were there as well. We ended up talking to them. We ended up going out with and that was Zach and Austin. We ended up going out drinking with them that night till like 3 o'clock in the morning, just randomly, you know. And then we kept the sort of connection going. I remember Joel talking about GenerOZity. Then he's like, it's charity, and Carl and I were just looking at him like blank face. We don't know what you were talking about. We have no idea what you were going on about right now. And it wasn't really until from there I saw Joel again very briefly at PAX 2018. Carl didn't come down for that because he was too busy playing Red Dead. Hey, he came out that same weekend. Carl's like, I want to play Red Dead too. I'm not going to Melbourne. And I actually kept going.
I remember. It came out like the Wednesday or the Thursday beforehand.
Yeah.
Like,
I was at PAX and I'm like, I might go home for a couple of hours. So get the tram home real quick, play a couple
I went to PAX and then I went home and streamed it to nobody. It wasn't even, I should have just stayed at PAX.
Yeah, briefly saw Joel and that there again. And it wasn't until 19 that Joel was in Melbourne and I went up, met up with him. He's like, hey, I'm in Melbourne, you want to come out for a drink? I'm like, yeah, we'll go out for a drink. And he's like, hey, you know, we're doing stuff with GenerOZity at PAX itself this year. You know, do you want to come along and video edit for us? Because I'm a video editor away from all this. And I was like, mate, is there anything else I can do? I'm like, I do this for a job. Almost anything else? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, we'll see what we can get you to do. And then he's like, oh, Carl coming in? I'm like, yeah, I can get Carl to come down. And Joel's like, oh, can you come and help out with us? And I said, oh, look. He's like, what do you guys want? And I think Callan and I said, we're like, oh, we just want access to media hour, really. We want a few games in there, and then you've got us for the rest of the time, really. because we didn't want to deal with the lines, etc. So yeah, we ended up. Oh, that's right. And he's like, oh yeah, we're also doing this like live stream.
That's right.
72 hours at a penthouse in the Docklands. Come along and we'll give you a segment and stuff. So we went along in that, and we fell in love with them. They fell in love with us. Yeah, like, we just clicked. Big sort of group. Like it's so hard to explain what happened that weekend. It was just this moment of time. I still think about it. Like, it was like one of the most perfect weekends ever. Like, just everything went so well. Like, we fit right in. Everyone accepted us in the group immediately. We felt like we just had a new fan around us, like people from GenerOZity and that. And it was quite incredible. Like, just the amount of money we raised as well, because I was being given stage packs as well, and we raised 40 grand or whatever.
Jesus.
It was. We worked our asses off though, like Carl and I. I remember we packed up the penthouse. We finished loading the van just after midnight on the Thursday night. Then we met up with them at 6 a.m. the next morning at PAX to unload all the stuff to set up for the stage. And we were just going non-stop the whole way through, like on the merch desk, running around getting coffees. People were just doing whatever, like really. But it was so much fun. We had so much fun. And I think from us just working our butts off like we did and didn't complain, we're just like, yeah, we'll just do whatever. They just brought us into the family. And then nowadays I'm part of helping set up a lot of the events, doing a lot of the scheduling. I've done all that in the past. Last year, I did a lot of the came up with a lot of the content for the Wombat stage, etc., and helped. Pretty much was the GenerOZ representative running a lot of the Wombat stage, etc., which was crazy in its own way last year at PAX. Like, I was just something like, oh, you kept passing me.
Yeah,
I gotta go here now. Bye bye.
I gotta go this way. Yeah, you're always going
22.
Yeah,
that was, yeah.
22. Yeah, you're always getting coffee.
I was like, that was non-stop as well. Like, I hardly slept each night because my brain was going crazy. That was actually, that PAX, I think, was the most emotionally charged PAX I've ever been to, because we hadn't seen people for 3 years after.
That's it. Now.
Years, and then I was trying to do all this stage stuff, and I don't know, something about it. That was just a very emotionally charged PAX.
It was big.
Draining.
Yeah, it was big. It was just big in every aspect, and I think everyone who went to
around people again.
Yeah, I think that was a big part of it. Was like, holy shit, look at all these people. I haven't seen this many people in one spot in years.
Yeah, exactly. And it was quite a thing. And then I'm trying to juggle this other stuff and keep that sort of emotions down at the same time. It was pretty full on. But I love the stuff I've done with GenerOZity. I've got another project on really been announced yet, so I can't talk about it until it's all settled and that. But it looks like we've got another, marathon stream coming up in April, May. I've got to wait.
Somewhere around there. Like sometime this year.
Another 3-day event, which we haven't done we try and do them each year, but then for whatever reason, things happen and we aren't.
Man, I feel like lately, like a year's not enough for a year, if that makes time. There's not a year's worth of stuff to do in that time frame. Well, it's just, it's nuts.
Last year, we wanted to do one, but one of the guys in the GenerOZ crew was getting married in May, and that's just sort of threw a spanner into works. And we're like, you know what? Too hard basket for the moment. Let's all go to Ryan's wedding and have a great time. An event like over our heads.
Yeah.
But no, it was like, and this is the great thing about content creation, I feel, and networking. You don't know where it's going to take you.
No, that's it.
You don't know who you're going to meet. Like, we never dreamed of meeting someone like Joel and getting involved and stuff from when we started that podcast. We had no aim of that at all. It's just things that happen, which is, I don't know, really, really nice.
Well,
I almost feel like, especially since the pandemic, I feel that networking's changed in a way. I don't know if it's just me getting older or whatever, but I've noticed, like, and it was probably around now. Maybe I just wasn't noticing as much, but there's, what's the word? People just looking to take advantage and like jump up that next rung socially, and the next one after that,
Yeah.
And there's a lot. I'm seeing that more and more these days.
I think you're right. and it's certainly I think it's more from a perspective of there's so many social medias. It's no longer like you don't like, oh, I stream on Twitch 3 nights a week or whatever. It's like, no, you don't want to stream on Twitch. I stream on Twitch. I do TikTok. I do YouTube. I do Instagram. I do like it becomes about you, and then it's all about getting your numbers up so that you can use your numbers to get ahead. And it's like, but at the same time, and this is the big thing that I've discovered, and I am a big believer in like, there's no gatekeeping. People want to know information, happy to share, no worries. And I've proven that many times, and it's just a matter of there's still that network, for lack of a better term, of I know this person, I know I can ask them, they're a decent person, and if I ask them, they'll help me because they can, not because it favors them in any way. And like, I've been very fortunate, particularly in the last sort of 12 to 18 months, I guess, is meeting a lot of these people where literally a handshake and a beer and then magic happens. And we're doing cool things, and I get invited to shit that I go, oh, fuck, well, why are you inviting me? But a lot of it's just from just being nice to people. it's like, hey, I want to do this. You want me to do this. You've got something I want. I've got something you want.
Yeah.
Handshake. Let's go. It's like, it doesn't have to be anything more than that. There's so many people like, hey, I want to start this might be a bit controversial, but so many people are like, I'm going to start an awards show, because awards shows are scams, right? It's like I'm going to start an awards show, and I'm going to invite all these people, nominate all these people, and then tell them all to come, so I get all their follows and all their, like, I can basically leech off their popularity, and so they can get, it's for themselves, really. It's not really, they're not really giving them.
Yeah, I think I've noticed a lot more selfishness. I think that was the word I was looking for. Yeah,
it's selfishness. It's that main character sort of energy where people are like, yeah, come to my stream and my show and stuff like that. It's like, no, it's not. No, it doesn't always have to be about you. And in some cases, like, and the big thing I always hammer home is like people that go, oh, I want to go on Twitch and going to start streaming. I'm like, you can be a meaningful community member on Twitch and not stream. Like, I know many people that are like well-known viewers of Twitch, and they just in people's streams and they have great conversations, or they might have good banter or whatever. You don't have to be the main character in every single story. Some of these other people are just as important. Because it's just crazy. And I've ran into it a few times where they're like, oh, I'm on Twitch, but I stream and no one comes and sees me, and everyone hates me. And I'm like, okay, don't stream then. it's like if you feel that bad about it.
Yeah, I still go live, and I have no one in my chat. I did an Assassin's Creed stream the other night, right? 3 hours.
You're doing the challenge, I saw.
Yeah, but I was like, I don't give a shit these days. Like, I do it. I don't know. It's just something I do. I just sit there and go.
I mean, if I was to be selfish, I'd just say, everyone else, you need to stream when I'm not streaming, so I can watch your streams. Yeah. All right. And then, but people would be like, you just don't want other people to go to other people's streams. It's like, no, I've been streaming so much. I've been just on that grind so hard lately. I kind of miss the fact that I'm like, fuck, I miss everyone's streams. And like the Assassin's Creed thing, I'm gonna try that challenge as well. And I was like,
good challenge. I finished it.
You finished it? Nice. Yep. Okay. Well, I didn't get to see it. So.
No, well, I did that stream that night. No one watched, and then I had mum and dad staying with me. I don't really.
Yeah. I understand.
So
that.
I was just like, I'll just finish the game. Finish it, and it's fun.
So many people. It's so weird when, and like, man, I talk to so many people about this, but it's like, when you start streaming, you do stream to nobody, and like if you could stream, I streamed to nobody for like 5 years.
Like, still stream to nobody, so yeah.
But then like I remember I remember streaming to nobody and whatever else, and like I had a schedule and I did everything right and all that sort of stuff, and and like you're talking about starting the podcast when the Switch came out. I remember I streamed. I went and lined up at the local EB Games to get the Switch as early as I could.
Wait, which EB did you get the Switch from?
Richmond. I was in Richmond. I went to the Richmond EB.
Okay.
So the only midnight launch they did was at Fed Square, right?
No, I was at Central.
Oh, Melbourne Central?
Yep.
And they had a midnight launch?
Yep.
Fuckers. Anyway, there's no time machine. I can't go back and change this, all right? But it's like, I remember I went home, I had everything set up. I had like everything set up, right? So at like fucking 8:01, went live with the Switch, playing Breath of the Wild. I'm going to stream all day, all night. I'm going to keep going. And I think I maxed out at like 30 viewers, and I thought that was fucking amazing. And it was purely because Americans couldn't quite play yet. Like they're waiting to go get their Switch, so I just capitalized on doing that. And like, I remember I streamed like 12 hours a day for that week, and I think my average viewers was like 3, and I thought that was great. So it's like, but it's like, that's what it's like though. But so many people are like, oh, I'm going to start streaming. Why don't I have 100 viewers? And it's like, well, that's not why you stream. You know, it's like, and like I know it's a numbers game and there's deals and stuff that can be done from it and whatever else, but also like just being consistent and doing content and being, you know, a community member and whatever, it opens doors just by itself.
Oh, it does.
And it's just, it's crazy. And I'm mindful that we are running out of time, but I feel like it will be.
I've still got another story I want to go through real quick.
Okay, you do your story, and then yeah, let's go.
I wanted to talk about real quickly imposter syndrome.
Okay.
I think it's a good one. I meet a lot of people and they're like, oh, I don't know if I'm good enough. As I said earlier, Callan and I just started asking for things, and we started going up the mantra. The worst they can say is no. Right.
And that's 100% the mantra. And yes, I'm not going to call people out, but I had this conversation with some people recently, and I'm like, just ask.
Yep.
Be a pest. They'll tell you to fuck off if they don't like you.
If they say no, it's not the end of the world. There's other opportunities. There's other things.
If you want it, ask for it.
Yep. Because I've met people and they're like, oh, I don't know if I should apply for Creator Pass. I'm like, just do it. The worst they're going to say is no.
Yeah.
The best thing they'll say is yes, or you get invited to something cool. If they say no, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. Life will go on. They don't hate you. There's other reasons.
They also, and I don't think people realize, but like when you go to apply for a Creator Pass for a lot of things, they ask you if you applied the year before, and that's just to check how long you've been a creator.
Yep.
Yeah. So do it.
Anyway, going on from that is
yes,
the E3 story. I've told.
Thank you, because this is. I was going to say, if we don't mention E3 in this podcast, we've done a disservice.
E3, the dinosaur event, which is now dead. We all grew up with E3, right?
Yes.
Can you remember reading or tuning into E3 stuff over the years?
I used to get all the photos I could find off the internet, off my dial-up connection, download them, rearrange them in my own homemade magazine, and print it out and read that.
Oh, there you go.
That's how much I loved E3 and never got to go. Never, ever got to go, and never will.
We always want that mantra, always, the worst I can say is no. So in 2018, I think our confidence was quite high on asking for things at that stage and applying for things. And I was like, saw that E3 applications are open. I'm like, I'm going to go ask for an E3 media pass. And he just laughed at me. He's like, good luck. I'm like, no, you do it too. And I said, we've asked for stuff, worst I can say is no. Who cares? It costs no money to put in an application, etc. I'm like, let's just do it. And Carl's like, all right, so we fill out the application. Several weeks go by. I get the email. Congratulations, you have an E3 media pass. I was so excited. Like, holy shit! Like, my girlfriend that was living with me at the time, she's like, "What has happened?" I'm like, "Oh God!"
It's the gamers version of getting tickets to Taylor Swift.
So like, 13-year-old Callan, he would piss himself. No idea. You have no idea what this means. This is the most craziest things. I'm like, Carl, I'm like, dude. And he's like, what? I'm like, got the media pass. He's like, I didn't. I got denied. And I was like, you are joking. He's like, denied, dude. I got the email. I didn't get it.
Holy shit.
Enjoy E3. And I'm like, no. I said, email him back and say my co-host, who has the exact same numbers, everything, exactly the same, got one, and I didn't. Why? And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that, man, because they might take it off, dude, and I don't want you to lose your pass. I'm like, bro, we started the podcast together. It was always you and me. I can't go to E3 by myself and have you. It's just ridiculously unfair. Like, that's just, I'm like,
that's nuts.
I'm like, if they take it off me, that's fine. We just forget about it and move on with our lives. And he's like, are you sure about this? I'm like, 100%, man. Seriously, this is me saying to you. I'm like, I will email for you. I don't care at this stage.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'll send an email. So he wrote down big email about, what's going on with this. Anyway, 2 days later, he gets an email back.
Hell yeah.
He rings me and he's like, we're going to E3. And we couldn't believe we got a media pass for E3. We worked out, God, this thing was worth thousands of dollars.
You didn't get a media pass to PAX, but you get one to E3.
Yeah, that's what was so funny as well. We laughed about that. We're like, well, we didn't. There was something else we got knocked back as well. There was a smaller convention somewhere that we got knocked back as well. And we thought it was just funny that we got to E3. But yeah, talking about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So we're there in America. We fly across to America, go to E3. And to explain the scope of that place was just ridiculous. Like, you look at how big the PAX like main floor is and all that. Probably times that by 3 and put it in 2 separate buildings. So there was 2 buildings that we spent one whole day in one building and then one whole day in the next building. So like in one building you have like PlayStation and blah blah. Oh, and Xbox had their own separate Microsoft theater area as well.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
just how big this place was just ridiculous. The amount of VR machines Sony had for VR set up. Then they had we didn't realize it straight away, but they had a special media area. So Carl, silly enough, lined up for an hour and a half to play Spider-Man. Then later that day, we figured out there was a media area where we walk in, sit down on the couches and play it. So I was in there. Now this is imposter syndrome. I'm there playing Dreams on the PlayStation with one of the fucking developers, and he's talking to me about the game, and I'm just like, I shouldn't be here.
No. Yep.
I'm like, nah, this is beyond me right now. Underneath the main convention area is all these rooms where they have all these meetings, devs and that. We got invited to a whole bunch of different things, and then we're sitting there chatting to devs and that, and Carl and I just giving each other glances every now and then across the table, like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, how are we here right now? What is this? But it was the most craziest experience, and then we got invited out to like a Microsoft party that night, and just had a couple of beers there and went home. But because we're just exhausted after each day, like just done in, and we still had the podcast each night, so we're podcasting each day. I think we did about 4 or 5 podcasts there. I
suppose you feel like you'd have to if you're at E3, right?
Yeah.
You'd be like,
there was so much happening as well that we felt we had to get all this down each day.
It's crazy.
There was just so much happening. I got to go to the so Carl came out like 2 days after I got to LA. So I got there and went to the EA event and then went to the Microsoft Theater event, when they do the big showing, and you got Phil Spencer on stage, all that. So I went to that, which was just mind-blowing. But it was so hard to take in because you're in a theater full of hundreds of people and they're all hearing, and it's going from trailer to trailer, and it's dark. I'm trying to write shit down in between each thing. It was just an absolute mess. Went to the PC gaming show as well, which was a smaller scale thing. That was really cool as well. But yeah, just wandering around like E3 itself was just the most, and especially now that it's gone and
no one else, it's it. Yeah, it's a finite number of people that can have seen E3 now.
And it was gamers' Christmas. It really was. It was. I remember passing IGN stuff. Wow, this is just too shy to go say anything. I regret, not going up and having a chat or whatever. But it's hard.
That whole everything about that just seems crazy to me. And like, to me, I'm like, there's no way I'll ever get to go to E3. I mean, even when it was still going, I was like, man, that'd be cool to get to one day if I can ever like fork out the cash to go and buy a ticket and like buy my way into the event. But it's like, I don't know. For me, and I mean, it's like, is it imposter syndrome, or is it seriously sometimes you're just punching above your weight, It's like, at what point, where's the line where you go, no, you're right, I should be here, and other times where you're like, fuck, I don't know how I pulled this off. But
as I said, it comes back to that thing you just ask, and that's what we did.
Yeah.
Put in that original application, then Carl sent that follow-up email saying, how come I didn't get this? And that's probably the best lesson is...
Yeah,
I mean, you don't know what opportunity is going to come out of it.
Yeah, I think and look, the kind of people that listen to this podcast are probably the people going, oh man, I should be asking for free Xbox. I was like, you can, but you're going to want to have a good pitch of, this is what I can do for you. Like, you know, I'm going to turn this Xbox into a fucking spaceship and launch it. It's going to be the first Xbox on Mars. They'll probably say, yeah, no worries. We'll give you an Xbox for that. But like, if you're like, I just want an Xbox because I want to play Call of Duty. It's like,
I got an Xbox when they released the new ones, the series.
Yeah, well, that's because you're an freaking E3 journalist, mate. That's
yeah, no, it's again, it was a thing I wrote to Xbox Microsoft and was like, hey, we want to do a review on the, you know, new Xbox, and I got sent a Series S. I know other people that got sent Series X's, and they're like, we got the Series X. You only got an S? I'm like, fuck yeah, I got an S.
Yeah, fucking free S.
I am bloody stoked. I still use it almost daily.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's also that weird vibe. I don't know. I get it from some content creators. I'll say some, not necessarily a lot that I talk to or whatever. But they're like, it's like, they sent me a free game and a T-shirt, and then they're like, but that guy got fucking flown to Sydney and went on a tour of something. And it's like, well, why don't I get that? It's like, mate, you got a free game and a T-shirt. That's pretty fucking big. There's a lot of people that don't even get that. It's like, it's just
exactly.
It's just a little.
Mate, you got a free game. Like, fuck, that's a big deal,
mate. That's it. And like, I think we were talking about this last year, and I'm like, man, if I paid for every game that I streamed, I'd be broke.
Carl and I worked it out. We worked it's been thousands of dollars in terms of passes and games and things we've been.
Yeah.
But we've been very, very lucky enough to be given over the years.
And that's 100%. And like, it's not great, but it's like events and stuff like that. Like, money can't buy events and stuff. And like, you get invited and it's like, this is nuts. This is awesome. Fucking yeah, it's like, even if you had money, you couldn't go to these events and stuff, and it's like, it's just nuts. And at the end of the day, and I suppose just being real about it, like, it's not that we don't do nothing. Like, we do work our butts off and do shit. So it's not like the heavens opened up and they said, hey, come to E3, and you said, sure, why not? I'm not doing anything. It's like, you worked your ass off, and you put the work in, you asked it, and like, it's not as easy as sending an email. You did your research and all that other stuff. It's yeah, it's important. The key message is, if you want something, don't just ask for it. And if they say no, and or maybe they say, look, I'm not really looking for you right now. You say, okay, what do I need to do to get this? How do I do this?
And then don't be afraid to ask as a content. Like, there are gatekeepers out there, but
it's just.
Yeah,
and also, like, you talk to community managers and like publishers and stuff like that. They want people to get excited about their stuff. They want people contacting them and going, "Hey, I want to review your game," or "I want to make a TikTok," or whatever. They want that. They'll give you keys for that. That is like, paying a company to make that shit for them is expensive. Sending game keys, great.
Nothing. And sometimes you might get the game early and get on the day off. But hell, Assassin's Creed. Carl saw the challenge. He's a Ubisoft creator and was like, "Oh, I'd love to do the challenge, but I don't have a key." And I sent him a key the other day.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
it's great. I mean, it's
challenge that is like,
and like I had this weird. It was actually it was when we were having the GenerOZity drinks after PAX last year, and I was talking to a couple other people, and we're just talking about Ubisoft stuff, and they're talking to me, and they're like, "Oh, they did this, and they got this thing coming up, and all that stuff." And I'm like, "Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know about that." And they go, "You're a Ubisoft creator." I'm like, "No, I'm not." They denied me the first couple times, and they're like, "But you always get like games and stuff." Like, yeah, I just ask them. I just literally send them a message. I'm like, "Hey, my community wants us to play Motorfest. I heard it's pretty good. Love to play it." And they're like, "Yep, love you. Let's go." That's it. And and like, I'm part of the creator program now because I think just sort of, it was going to happen eventually anyway. But it was like, they've always been really cool. And just like, you tell them what you want to do. Like, you just be clear. You don't say, give free game, please. Like, that's not going to help you. But if you're like, hey, I want to review it, or I want to make a mini series, or I want to do a playthrough, whatever, just say what you want to do. They give you the key, and then actually do what you said you're going to do. Easy days. Way you go.
Yeah, exactly. When I write to places, I'm like, hey, we want to review on the podcast and some streaming. We decide play the game. That helps out. Then it's like, yes, we can, or no, sorry, we can't this time, but maybe down the track. You know, it's like, yeah, like even these days, we still don't get everything we ask for.
No, I don't. I definitely don't.
It's never been 100% yes rate, and it never will be.
Yep,
that's fine. You know, that's how it is.
Yeah, and like I've had, I've had like movie screenings and stuff like that I go to, and I do a lot of that stuff. Like I hate the term, but I am an influencer in that category, and like the amount of times that you ask them, you know, what do they want you to do? Take photos, use hashtags. It's like, okay, you really want that? All right, no worries. But then at the same time, it's been like I saw like a cool event. It was they were doing a special screening for the final episode of the last season of The Mandalorian. And I'm like, I want to go to a Star Wars on the big screen event. That would be sick. And like I messaged a friend of mine, they're like, I don't think they're inviting much in terms of media. It's all kind of like Star Wars creators and stuff like that. And I'm like, do you have a contact number? And they're like, nah, Disney kind of hard to get a hold of or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. That wasn't no. That was, you need to look elsewhere. And I found
this one's going to be tricky.
Yeah, I'm like, I found an email address that it's like request further information on Disney screenings or something. Like it was worded really funky. So I emailed them and said, I'm very interested in this screening at this cinema at this time about this show, and how do I get a ticket? Nothing. I get nothing. And then like a week before it, I just got a ticket. Just nothing. No hello, no nothing. Just ticket. And I'm like, that's all I wanted. Thank you very much. It was so nuts, because then people are like, how did you get a ticket to a Disney event? You're not even media. I'm like, I just asked for it. And they gave it to me. And it's like, and I was so wrapped.
You talk about media. I think the line's blurred a lot now.
They are. Content creators are, people might hate this, but content creators are the news source for a whole nother generation. Like they ain't watching Channel 9 news, and they're not subscribing to a newsletter or a blog. And hell, look, I mean, we had this conversation with Drew, who does he's doing long form YouTube now. And, he's like, like even daily news YouTube channels don't really exist anymore. A lot of them have all kind of folded, or they've moved to like a monthly or a bi-weekly kind of thing. And by then it's like, how much news can you do? Or they're a podcast or a very long episode. And then in that case, you know, like I used to think of like, I used to watch like IGN Daily and stuff like that, which was like 5 minutes every day of like news topics and stuff like that. That you don't really get that much anymore. It's podcasts or like long form YouTube, and then social media and TikTok, and that's it. So then all of a sudden, it's the influencers and the content creators that are controlling the message for a whole generation. Different story for older generations, obviously, but like now, if you're a 20-something-year-old, you're probably getting all your news from TikTok, which may be good, may be bad.
I think the one thing that you're talking about, you know, they're now. At the same time, I think people are, like, a lot of content creators are petrified on criticizing something.
Oh yeah.
Like I think, and look, on the podcast we criticize things all the time.
Yeah.
And I still send that work off to places.
You have to. Yeah.
I think creators should be more comfortable with criticizing. And I don't mean go, oh no, this is shit. I mean actually constructive criticism.
Yeah.
Look, I did not enjoy this like bit of the game because of this, but I did enjoy this or this, but I feel like this could be improved on by maybe doing this.
Constructive criticisms, yeah.
Exactly. You don't go, oh no, this is shit house.
Yeah, I've had a few where I've gone, this is garbage. This is hot shit garbage, and like you can tell, like it's not, and they know it. And like there's a couple of times where I've like submitted like say like a YouTube video or anything. I'm like, that was rough. Here's the content, and they go, yeah, we know. So it's like, yeah, I did the best I could with what you gave me, but you know, there's only so many ways to polish a turd, is what they say.
When you go to an event or play a game or something, and you know it's not the people going, this is great, this is fantastic. It's like you're not being genuine at that stage. You're just, and it kind of to try and get more stuff or whatever. And I don't know.
Yeah, it kind of makes you, you know, if you like, and you know, I'm going to shit on something that I was invited to, actually asked to go to as well, and that is Madam Web, the movie, right?
Right. Okay.
Hot garbage. Not even like I walked out. I remember paying money and seeing Suicide Squad and walking out going, I can make that movie better. Like I could do that definitely. There's no saving Madam Web. All right, that is awful. And I said as we were walking in, I'm like, because they had embargoes and stuff like that because you see it early. And one of the embargoes was no social impressions. Like, don't even talk about if it's okay, good, bad, enjoyed it, whatever. They don't want you to mention shit because they want to sell the tickets for day one before word gets out how bad this movie is.
I want to get the Spider-Man fans in.
Yeah, I mean, spoilers for Madam Web. Don't see it. That's not really a spoiler, but they don't have any powers or Spider-Man in that movie. So all the best bits are in the trailer, and all the bits in the trailer are dream sequences.
Oh,
it's bad. And then and like I did a post, and I'm like, this is interesting characters in a bad movie. And I sort of explained that it's missing this, and like you don't want to spoil it and say, hey, this is the ending, but man, like you can't go out going, Madam Web is the best movie I ever saw. Can't wait for everyone to see it. I'm so excited for you to see it.
I saw someone's post that Madam Web was a great movie. I'm like,
it's not. Yeah. I could tell you it was a bad movie before I got there because the red flags stab you in the face as you walk. And you know what? They knew it was a bad movie because you could tell that they went, okay, this movie's not going to make any money, but it's going to cost us $200 million. So we need to take some sponsor deals. What have we got? Because there is about 30% of the movie, they're walking around with a Pepsi can in their hand. And if they're not in their, if it's not in their hand, it's on the table. There's actually an entire scene where she asks for a beer and they give her a Pepsi. And then she complains that she would like a beer. And they're like, no, you get Pepsi. And then you ready? The big bad guy is killed when she throws the Pepsi sign at him. He dies by a Pepsi sign falling on him and crushing him to death in the fireworks factory.
Oh my gosh,
it's shit.
Oh my god.
But like they know that the movie's shit. They just needed to recoup their money, and that's how they do it through all marketing stuff like that. And we're just a tool going there to watch it. But yeah, there's no way I was going to come out and go, you must see Madam Web, it's the best. Like I've seen movies and you go, it's got this or whatever. If you're into this, it'll be cool, whatever. But like this one was like, no, this hot garbage. It's nothing. There's nothing salvageable here.
I guess, I just feel like content creators should speak out a bit more and
they need to
more balanced opinions, I guess is the word for it.
But like when I did reviews recently, like I did a mic review recently, for example, and like they're straight up like, hey, do an honest review, talk about it. Like it's not like you're requested to say that this is right. They want you to talk about their microphone and all the details and stuff like that. They want like more information out there. It's not necessarily that they're going, here's $1,000. You need to say, I love microphone. I'm like, no, it's like, it's not how it works. It's like, so when they choose to like hype up, stuff, it just kind of looks like pandering, to be honest. Anyway, we are well and truly on time. So we need to wrap this up. Where can people find yourself or GameTrain podcast? Like, give us the spill. Where can people find more of your content?
I guess the main socials I sit on is, as I call it these days, which is at GameTrain Talk. Posts there generally daily at the moment, doing a nice daily selfie challenge, which a lot of them being me just eating an ice cream because I'm like, I've got nothing on today.
Mate, talk about influencer. I thought about ice cream every time I saw that picture. I'm like, is that a drumstick? Has he got a drumstick?
Is that a Cornetto? Gets a sponsor deal from Cornetto. Like, daily Cornetto. So yeah, at GameTrain Talk on Twitter. You can find the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, most other places. I think my RSS feed's connected to most things. GameTrain podcast. It's better to listen to the most recent stuff, except for special editions like the 100 and things like that. But because it's current stuff, I guess kind of current at times. And then Twitch, GameTrain Twitch is the username. I could not get GameTrain, which is so. I wish I could just find the person that's got it and take off Twitch off the end of it because I hate it. But I go in a room and go, hi, GameTrain Twitch. I'm like, just say GameTrain.
Why? I mean, one day.
That's generally, it's also got a Facebook page, but we don't really use Facebook these days now. 2017, it was cool. 2024.
It's just used for your parents to stalk you these days.
I to send photos to aunties and uncles and cousins and things.
Yeah.
Organize Christmas meetups. Yep.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly what it's used for.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So,
well,
yeah,
thank you for coming along. And if you haven't already checked out the GameTrain podcast, and obviously the GameTrain streams quite random times, mostly late night. Usually great place to go check in before you head to bed. Still going.
Well, also, if you are a content creator listening to this and you ever see me out somewhere, don't be afraid to come and say hi and ask any random advice or things, etc. I'm always willing to help out people. Or if you want to get
Ask him
GenerOZity in any way through volunteering, come have it fully open. People coming up and
asking for a free Xbox.
Don't do that.
Absolutely, and yeah, you should absolutely come chat. And I'm much the same. If you ever got more questions or follow-up questions and stuff like that, absolutely reach out. You can always just leave a comment below as well, and check us out on all the socials. Creator Notes Pod, we're everywhere, and recording weekly. As much as it drives everyone insane, we are doing it. And if you enjoyed and come this far in the podcast, you obviously like it, so please like this, please subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to it, and we'll see you all again very soon. Thank you, GameTrain, for being here,
Thank you for having me.
See you all again soon.